Good morning to all the students. Yesterday we have started the concept of queues where we have discussed what a queue is and we have seen some examples also. And in today's class, we will continue with the same concept of queues. We will see some of the applications of queues as well as an example of how a queue is being operated. And if time permits, we will also discuss how a queue is different from the circular queue. What is the reason for implementing the circular queues even though we have this queues concept, right? So all these things we are going to discuss in today's class. So one of the application, coming to the application part, one of the applications of this queue is it is used in job scheduling. Yesterday also, while discussing the applications of queues in the real life as well as in the computer science world, I told that most of the applications we find for these queues in the operating systems context. So one of the important application of queues is in the job scheduling. So we have number of jobs. Jobs are nothing but you can assume it as a process also. Right? So whenever you want to execute a program, you should bring that program from the secondary memory and load it into the primary memory. And the processor will take that process, will take that program, and it will start its execution. So a program under execution is called as the process. This is what we have discussed in the yesterday's class. So when we have number of processes that are waiting for the processor, that the processors are waiting for the execution, right? So in such case, we should not deny the processes even though the processor is not available. Even though the processor is not available, you should not deny those processors who are waiting for that processor, right? So for this purpose, what we will do is we will implement this job queue where we will put all the jobs that are waiting for the processor in that job queue, right? Since as they follow the FIFO order, whoever job that comes first, that will be placed in the queue as the first element. So the first element will be given the processor. That means it will be served first. So the first process, the first job which has entered into the queue will be the first process or the job that is going to be served. Okay. So here is one application we can see. As I told that, what is the initial values of front and rear pointers for queues?
-1.
It is -1, right? So initially, when assume that I have a job queue of 4 elements. So if the front and rear pointers are -1, then there are no elements, then the queue is empty. When one job comes for the processor, we'll simply put it into the job queue. Right? So when we put that job inside the queue, it occupies the first element like this, that is queue of 0. And when there is one element in the queue, I told that you have to increment both the rear and front point, right? And I also told that this is not mandatory that you should always point the front and rear pointer to 0 when you have one element inside the queue. That is the first element, not one element. When you have the first element inside the queue. So here he has done with rear pointing to 0 and front pointing to -1, right? It depends on the logic which the programmer is going to do. It is not a thumb rule saying that you always make the front and rear pointers to point to 0 when you are inserting the first element. Right? So my logic is I'm making the front and rear pointer to point to 0. So when there is the first element inside the queue, J1 stands for job 1. When there is a first element, I inserted at the first element of the queue, that is queue of 0, where I am making the both front and rear pointing to 0. Now assume that at some other time interval, another job J2 has entered into the queue. That means J2 is also requesting for the process. When a job is requesting for the process, it is a convention that we follow, that we put this job inside the job queue. So as there is the first element, that is job 1 is already occupied with the queue of 0, the second job should be placed as the second element of the queue. So in this case, the rear will be incremented. As I told that when you perform an insertion operation, what is the name of the insertion operation with respect to queues?
NQ, sir.
NQ. And the deletion operation is
DQ. DQ, sir.
So when we want to insert an element, the pointer which you have to increment is the rear pointer. That means you are going to insert the element inside the queue with respect to the rear. That means you are going to insert at the rear part. So the rear is incremented and it is pointing to 1, therefore job is inserted. Similarly, assume that at some other point of time, another job J3 has entered into the queue. So when J3 has entered, the previous job J1 and J2 are still present inside the queue only, inside the job queue only. So for that purpose, you have to insert job 3 as the third element of the queue. Therefore, you have to increment the rear pointer, and the rear is pointing to 2, and you insert job 3 at that particular location. And in the next interval, what happened here is job 1 has given the processor. So whenever you give the processor to one job, then you have to delete that particular job from the queue. So what job you have to remove? Since J1 is occupying the first element, there J1 has to be given the processor, and then J1 gets executed. So when the J1 is allocated the processor, you have to remove that job from the job queue. So for removing, what you have to do, you have to start your processing from the front end. Why? Because deletion always takes place from the front end. So you have to increment the front pointer, therefore it points to 1, and that is how the job 1 is deleted. And next, coming to the second part, assume at this particular interval of time, the job 1 has completed its part of the processor, execution part, and the processor is free. Therefore, we allow the job 2 to take the processor. Right. So for this purpose, we have to increment the front pointer such that it points to 2, and then you delete this job 2. Right. So this is how the jobs will be scheduled inside the job queue. Right. Is it not the application of a queue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is a very simple example or simple application of these queues. As I told that we don't have any mathematical part, or we don't have any algorithmic part for this queues application. But in Stack we have everything. We have done everything with respect to an algorithm and an example. Right? We have illustrated with an example. But here I told in the first class itself that this particular applications of queues is simply a theoretical part. You should understand how these jobs are inserted into the job queue and how they are going to be deleted from the job queue. All this you have done. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So before going to another application of this queues, which is nothing but the priority queues and round robin scheduling, we'll just go through an example of queues. Right. So these type of questions, these type of questions you will come across in the competitive examination. So you may expect these type of questions in the competitive examinations like GATE and some other PSU examinations, entrance examinations. So please consider, it's a very simple example you will find in the queues. nothing you find difficult in solving this problem, but you should know the operations, right? So what are the basic operations of queues we have discussed in the
NQ and DQ.
NQ and DQ, sir.
NQ and DQ, right? And as we know that NQ is an insertion operation, therefore it accepts one element as the parameter, which is nothing but the item which you are going to insert into the queue. And DQ is a deletion operations where you are simply incrementing the friend pointer. You never say what element should be deleted. Why? Because by definition of the queues, the deletion should always take place from the friend part. Right? So that is the reason why there is no parameter for this DQ operation. And we have some supplementary functions like is empty, is full also you can write, and friend, rare, all these things. Friend means it will tell what element is present at the front part of the queue. Rare means it will tell what element is present at the rear part of it. And is empty is a supplementary function which tells whether the queue is empty or not. Right? So can anybody tell me what is the condition to check whether queue is empty or not?
Rare equal to minus
Rare
one,
and
friend equal to
friend
minus one.
equal to minus one.
Right. We will check this condition. Rare is equal to -1 and we will also check friend is equal to. If these two conditions are satisfied, then we say that it is empty. Now tell me what is the condition for is full?
Rare equal to sign, friend
Equal to 0.
Super. Rare is equal to, the rare should point to the last element. The last element is identified as size -1 and it should also check that it is front is equal to 0. If these conditions are satisfied, then we say that the queue is full. Have you done the program in the lab session?
No, sir.
So if you look at the example, you may get questions like this. You will be given some sequence of queue operations and you will be asked to find the elements that are present inside the queue. Right? You will find this type of questions in the MCQs that you come across in the mid-examination also. So these are the sequence of operations that should be performed, and we have to see what he is asking. At the end, what is the final list of elements? He will be asking that. So what is the first operation? Let us take an empty queue like this. Let's take an empty queue of size 6. And initially rare is equal to -1 and front is also equal to. So what is the first operation we have? NQ of 5. So what is that you have to do?
Insert five.
Insert 5 into the queues.
At the rear part. Therefore, you, since it is the first element, you have to make both the pointers rear and front pointing to 0 itself. And you insert the element. This is rear and this is. Now what is the second operation? NQ of 3. So you have to increment the rear pointer such that it points to 1 and you insert it. Next, what is the operation that is performed here? Third operation, DQ operation. For performing the DQ operations, you should increment the front pointer. Therefore, the front is pointing to 1. And as I told that this is a logical deletion, you never delete it. But in order to avoid the confusion, what you will do is you will simply remove it, right? But remember that in the original programming, what you are doing, you are not physically deleting the element. You are logically deleting, right? You just increment the front pointer. That's it. You are not bothered about what is there inside this before this 0. Right? So what is the fourth operation? It is NQ of 7. Therefore, there is pointed to 2 and here is my rear and I insert 7. Like that you perform these operations. What is fifth one? DQ operation. Right. So you delete this and increment the friend such that it is pointing to 2 and you delete. Next. Sixth one. Friend. What is friend pointing to? Friend is an operation or it is a function which tells the element that is pointed by the friend pointer. So what is the element that is pointed by the friend pointer?
7.
7, sir.
Right. So the output will be. Now the seventh operation is the DQ operation. Therefore, you remove this element, and when you remove this element, what happened?
Q is empty.
This friend is incremented when you remove this element. When listen carefully, this is very important. So when you perform a DQ operation, you are incrementing the friend pointer. Therefore, friend will be pointing to 3 and rear is pointing to 2. So you can identify that the elements that the queue has been emptied whenever the front crosses the rear, or else you can write like this: rear is equal to front plus 1. In such situation, you can identify that there are no elements present inside the queue. So if there are no elements present inside the queue, what you have to do? You have to make these front and rear pointers to be again set back to -1. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now at this point, I am trying to perform a DQ operation, 8th instruction. So whenever you try to perform a DQ operation on an empty queue, what is that condition called?
Q underflow, sir.
Queue under. Therefore, this is an error condition. You are just giving the message to the user saying that you are trying to DQ a queue which is empty. Right. So that is underflow. Therefore, we are just mentioning it as an error. Right. And 9th one. What is that instruction? E is empty. So is it empty or not?
Yes, sir.
So we will implement these E is empty and E is full functions as a Boolean function. What do you mean by Boolean function?
Either true or false.
Right. It will return either 0 or 1. 1 represents the true condition and 0 represents the false condition. Right. Since E is empty, since the queue is empty at this particular situation, this particular statement will return a value of true. Next again, we have NQ of 9. Therefore, you increment both this. Since it is the first element, you have to make these 2 pointers to point to 0. Therefore, rear is pointing to this one, F is pointing to this location, and you insert that element. Next, 11th instruction is NQ of 7. Therefore, you increment the rear pointer. And you insert. And next, 12th. This is another supplementary function. By looking at that function, what do you understand? Size. Size means it will tell how many elements are present inside the queue. Right. So how can you identify the size? Any logic you have? I asked you to implement the size function. Can anybody tell me the logic for
Rear
implementing?
minus front.
Super. It is rear minus front, but it has some logical error. Right? So if I perform the rear minus front, 1, what is rear pointing to? 1. Right. Minus front pointing to 0. So that result I got is 1. Is it correct?
No, sir. Plus
No,
one.
sir.
What do you have to do?
Plus 1, sir.
Have to add 1. Right. So now it becomes, for example, my rear is pointing to this location. Let us say my rear is pointing to this location, and front is pointing to 1. Right. Now let us check how many elements should be there. If rear is pointing to 3 and front is pointing to 1,
3 elements. 3 elements.
let us check with this formula. Rear is equal to 3 minus 1, that is front, plus 1. Therefore 2 plus 1, that is 3. Right. So this particular formula, rear minus front plus 1, is working in all the scenarios. This is how you have to implement the size function. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Now we'll go back to the example. What is the 13th instructions we have? 13th instruction we have NQ of 3. You increment the rear pointer such that it points to 2 and we insert 3. The 14th instruction is NQ of 5. Therefore, you increment the rear pointer. My rear pointer is pointing to the 3rd index and I have inserted this 5. 15th instruction, TQ. So you increment the front pointer. My front pointer is pointing to the 1st index. And as I told that this, even though it is logically deleted, for our understanding purpose, we will physically delete. At this point, after performing all these 15 instructions, you may be asked a question like, what is the value of the front? Or you may be asked a question like, what is the value of front rear? Or you may be asked a question like, how many elements are there? Or you may be asked to print the elements, right? So these are the different types of questions you may be asked in the competitive examination point. Is it clear? So this is a very simple example, but you should know how you can perform the NQ and DQ operation. Right? Clear, right?
Yes, sir.
As I told that you can implement the queues either using the arrays or linked list. There are two methods of implementing the queues. One is using arrays and another one is using linked list. Till now we have seen the implementation of queues using arrays only. We never went to the implementation of linked list. As I told that this particular implementation of queues and stacks using linked list will be dealing once we complete the concept of linked list. And remember, there are two more implementations for the queues. One is the linear arrays. You can implement the queues in the linear fashion, or you can implement the queues in the circular fashion. We'll see why we are going to this circular queue, even though we have the concept of linear. So these are the two ways of implementing the queues. And these are simple examples how this front and rear pointers are going to change. See here. Can you see this slide? We have two diagrams here. One is the normal configuration and second one is the wrapped around configuration. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. This normal configuration is for the linear queues. And this wrapped around configuration is for the circular queues. Wrapping. What do you understand by wrapping? Wrapping means
Rolling.
rolling, right? It's not rolling, but okay, so it is somewhat similar term only. But wrapping means whenever you reach one end, when you come back to the other end for the next operation, then that is called as wrapping and wrapping, right? So in the circular queues, we make use of the wrap around configuration. We'll see how you can move from the last position to the first position, all these things will see. So here is an example. We are moving into the circular queues. We will discuss why the linear queues are not suitable for all the applications, and what is the disadvantage of this linear queue, and what is the reason for moving into the circular queues. All these things will discuss. Right. So here, as I told in the first class itself, what are the 2 pointers that are used for the NQ and DQ operations? Till now, we have seen 2 terminologies. One is
Rear and
the
front, sir.
front, right? Other than that, you can also take the head and tail. Nothing wrong. It is your choice. So here we see an example of how these head and tails are going to change when you perform the NQ operation and DQ operation. Right? Operations remains the same, but you are using a different terminology. That is the point you have to remember. That's it. Nothing more. So what is the size of the array I have taken here? What is the last index? If I ask you about the size, no,
50, sir.
50. Why? Because here it starts with 0 and ends with 49. Therefore, the size of the array that I have taken here is 50. Right. So initially head. What head is equivalent to? Is it front or rear?
Front, sir.
Front. Tail is equal to.
Rear.
So nothing more than that. You just use the term tail instead of rear and head instead of front. That's it. Nothing more. So whenever you perform a DQ operation, what is that you are doing? You have to increment the front pointer. That means in this case, you have to increment the head pointer. That's it. And whenever you perform an NQ operation, you have to increment the rear pointer. In this case, you have to increment the tail pointer. That's it. So what are the values, initial values of head and tail?
-1. -1, sir.
-1 only. Programming does not change, right? So initially I have head and tail initialized to -1. So the blue lines or the blue colored boxes, square boxes, represent the elements which are already occupied, and the empty square boxes represents the empty spaces, right? So how many elements are present inside this queue? In the first case,
3, sir. 3, sir.
3. That we can get it by tail minus head plus 1. Right? In the previous example, you have given the formula also, and after that, I have performed an NQ operation, this one. So I have to increment the tail pointer such that it points to 3 and the element has been inserted. Now after that, I have performed a DQ operation. DQ means you have to increment the head pointer. Therefore, you increment the head and it is pointing to the location or index 1, and this element is also vacant. The initial element, that is the 0th index element, is also vacant. So like that, I have performed number of NQ operations. At one position, look at this diagram, this one. At one position, what happened is my tail is equal to size -1, and also the head is equal to 0. So this is nothing but the Q full condition. Is it right or not?
Yes, sir.
Now after the queue is full, I have performed 4 DQ operations. 4 DQ operations means you have to increment the head 4 times. Therefore, the value of head becomes 4, right? So here is my head and here is my tail. So at this particular point, you have to observe one important issue, that even though the rear or the tail is pointing to the last location, right, there are few elements or there are few vacancies at the front part of the queue. Can you see this one?
Yes, sir.
Right. But if you Yesterday also we have discussed that this head is equal to 0 we have added later. Initially when I asked you to find how can you find the Q full condition, means you told only one condition, that tail is equal to size minus. But we have added this later. So if you have not added this code, head is equal to 0. So at this position what happened is that tail is pointing to the last location, that is size minus 1. And if you try to insert an element or perform an NQ operation, what it will tell? It will simply say that the queue is full. Queue is full. Therefore, but you can observe here that the first 4 positions of the queue are still vacant. They can accommodate the elements. They can accommodate the elements. But because of the condition that we have written in the program, tail is equal to size minus 1, we are unable to accommodate the new elements even though the queue is vacant at the front part. So this particular condition that arises is called as false overflow. This is called as false overflow issue. Right. So this is the disadvantage of the linear implementation of the queues. So what is the term that we have given for this one, for this disadvantage?
False.
False overflow, sir.
False overflow, right? So false overflow is nothing but it is a situation in the linear array where the user is unable to insert the elements even though there are vacant positions at the front part of the queue. Right. This is because of the logic which the user has used. That means the user is going to use the condition rear is equal to size minus 1 to check whether the queue is empty, queue is full or not. So at this particular juncture, we have the condition called false overflow condition. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So here what is happening with this false overflow is we are going to waste a lot of spaces at the front part, right? This is just a simple example where we have performed only 4 DQ operations and we have only 4 vacant positions. Assume that my head is pointing to this location. That means there are only 2 elements in the queue, but the remaining 48 elements are vacant. Even then also the queue is not used to insert the elements into the queue. That reason is we have a condition called false overflow condition. It's a programming defect we have identified. Is it right or not? So in order to not to waste the spaces or the vacant positions that are present at the front part of the queue, we are going to use one more implementation which is called as the circular queue. So whenever you find this condition tail is equal to size minus 1, when the user asks for the NQ operation, you write the program in such a way that you go and check whether the front part is vacant or not. That means after the last element, the tail has to go to the first element. This is called as wrapped around configuration. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Now can anybody tell me how can you go from the last position to the first position? Is there any operator that is supported here?
Pointer.
T minus 6.
It is not pointer. There is an operator that supports this wraparound configuration. Please think of. Again, I am giving one clue. It lies inside the arithmetic only. Arithmetic operators. How many arithmetic operators are there?
Doctor.
How many arithmetic operators are there?
5, sir.
5. What are they?
Plus, minus, division, multiplication.
Minus, star, division and
Mod.
modular division.
Module.
Right. Now tell me,
Modulus.
of these 5 operators, which operator supports the wraparound configuration? We can simply cross these 2 operators, right? Plus and minus cannot be used, and similarly star cannot be used. But you have to check whether out of division or modular division, which one
Sir,
Modulus.
modular division. So whenever you remember this particular point regarding the programming, whenever you want to implement something that has the wraparound configuration, then the operator that is supported for that operation is nothing but the modular division operator. Is it clear?
yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
Right. So let us check with the n is equal to 5. Now, what are the values that are present before this 5? Whatever elements you take, for example, I take 0, 0 mod 5. What is the value?
0, sir.
0, 1 mod 5. What is 1 mod 5?
0, sir.
1 sir.
1,
1
2 mod 5,
2
2, sir.
2, sir. 2, sir.
3 mod 5.
3, sir.
3
Modular division means it gives the remainder. Can we divide this 3 with 5? No, 5 zeros are 0 and the remainder is 3. That's the reason it's 3. 4 mod 5.
4, sir.
4, sir.
5 mod 5. Now tell me.
0.
0.
0. 6 mod 5.
1
1, sir.
1. 7 mod 5.
2
sir.
2, sir.
Like that, you perform 101 mod 5.
1, sir.
1
Super. 127 mod 5.
2, sir.
2, sir.
Right. So you can observe that when you perform a modular division operation with a number n, the result always lies between 0 to n minus 1. Right. The remainders always, for example, if you have taken the value of n is equal to 5, the remainders will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You cannot get a 5 as the remainder. You cannot get 6 as the remainder. So we will get only 5 values, that is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right. Similarly, if I take 7 as n, so what are the set of values that are accepted as the remainder? Is from 0
to 6, sir.
3, 4, 5, and now if I take n is equal to 50, tell me.
0 to 49.
0 to 49. This is the case we are dealing. So after 49 or after 49, when you want to perform an NQ operation, then we will make use of this modular division operator such that it will go back and check the condition, check the element which is present at the 0th index. Right? Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what is the disadvantage of linear array? We have the disadvantage of false overflow condition. You should be in a position to explain what this false overflow condition is. False overflow condition is a condition which arises at the time of performing the NQ operation, where the user is not allowed to insert the elements, or the user is not allowed to perform the NQ operation even though there are vacant positions at the front part of the queue. Right. So to avoid such situation, the solution for that false overflow condition is we will be implementing the queues in a circular fashion. Circular fashion means wrap-around configuration. Wrap-around configuration means we make the pointer, tail pointer or the rail pointer to point to the first location once it reaches the last location. So after last location, it is going to check the first location. So this is how we are going to do this. So allow the head to be the moving target. Listen here. When the tail end fills up and the front part of the array has empty slots, new insertions should go into the front part of the queue. That is called as the circular. So at this position, head is pointing to this 4th index and tail is pointing to the 49 index. So when the user tries to perform an NQ operation, as I told that the tail has to go and check the 0th location. Is it clear? After 0, it will go and check the first condition. After 1, it will go and check the second condition. After that, it will go and check the third condition. Right. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. As I told that we have two different implementations of queues. One is the array implementation and another one is the linked list implementation. So the implementation of queues using arrays is very easy to implement. Very easy. Programming is very easy. We are very much familiar with the programs related to arrays. So it will be very easy. But the disadvantage is it has the limited capacity with the fixed array. What is this term called? There is a special term for this one. Whenever we are fixing the size or
Static.
so
Static.
right, it is called as static memory allocation. Static memory allocation. Since arrays makes use of the concept called as static memory allocation, that means the user is going to fix the size of the array before programming. So he cannot change it, he cannot alter it, or he cannot increase the size or decrease the size of the array. The disadvantage we have with the static memory allocation, so that applies to this array implementation of queues also. Right. And one more thing, as we have discussed just now, that a special behavior is needed when the last pointer or the rear pointer reaches the end of the array. Right. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please give me 1 minute of time. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you see the screen, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is how we are going to implement the queues using arrays, and this is an example of how we can implement it using linked list. But as I told that we will go into the discussion of this linked list implementation once we are done with the linked list concept. So in the next week we are going to start the linked list concept. After that we will come back again to this arrays and queues, and we will try to implement the arrays and queues using linked list. Don't worry about this linked list part. So we'll again come back to the applications of queues. So the second application, what is the first application we have discussed in today's class?
Job scheduling, sir.
Job scheduling, sir.
Job schedule. And the second application we are going to discuss with respect to the applications of queues is the round robin scheduler. As I told that you have number of processes and every process will be waiting for the processor That means in order to execute that process, we need to have the processor. So it will be that processes will be waiting for the processor inside the process queue or job queue. In the last application we have discussed, right? Similarly, we have number of scheduling algorithms. I told in the earlier class itself that some of the schedulers we have as FCFS, which stands for first come first serve, and SJF, which stands for shortest job first. And similarly, we have another application which is called as round robin scheduling. Round robin scheduling. Okay. So what happens here is each and every job will be given a time slice. Listen carefully. It's a simple concept, but you should understand. So we have a job queue like this. And we have the processor where we are going to execute these jobs. And assume that we have some jobs like J1, J2, J3. 3 jobs are there. And let us take the burst time of these jobs J1, J2, and J3 as 12, 10, and 8. What do you mean by burst time? Burst time is, anybody guess what a burst time is? Are you there?
Sir, widespread and yes,
Yes, sir.
So can anybody tell me what a burst time is? BURST. We call it as burst time.
Sir, the time required for the execution of a process.
Right. So if you take J1, I'm saying that the burst time of J1 is 12. That means this is the total time that is taken by this job to complete. Similarly, J2 burst time is 10, means J2 takes 10 milliseconds or whatever it may be. The units may differ. So it takes 10 units of time to complete the execution of job. Similarly, the burst time of J3 is 8. That means J3 will be completed within 8 units of time. Right. So like this, we have these jobs and their burst times are given. In order to execute these particular jobs, we need to have the access for this processor. This is what we have discussed till now, right? But if it is a normal scheduling algorithm, what happens is if the processor is free, then J1 will be allocated and it will execute it for its complete burst time. That means J1 will be taking the processor for 12 units of time and it completes its execution, and then it is removed from this J1 is removed from this queue. And after that, since we have this J2 will be given the processor and the burst time of J2 is 10. It will take this processor completely for the 10 units of time. And once it has done its work, this J2 will be removed. After that, J3 will be given the processor, and after executing 8 milliseconds or 8 units of time, the J3 will also be removed from the job. This is how a normal flow of this job scheduling is done, and that is called as FCFS, first come, first serve. And other than that, we have 2 terminologies like preemptive and non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. That's a different case. We are not going to enter into those topics. Right? So this is how the FCFS will work. But other than this, we have another scheduling algorithm which is called as round robin scheduling. Right? The concept remains the same. We have 3 jobs in the job queue. This is called as job queue. And the burst times of J1 is 12, J2 is 10, and J3 is 8. And similarly, we have a processor where we need to access this processor to execute these jobs. Right? But we have an extra concept here in the round robin. We call it as RR scheduling. The concept is it has a time slice, as a time slice, or it can also be called as time quantum also. Right. So the RR scheduler, what it will do is it will define a variable called time slice or time quantum. It will give some value to this. For example, if I give the time quantum as 5, that means 5 units of time will be given exclusively for this any job. For any job, it will give 5 milliseconds. That means the processor will be allocated up to this time slice only. Is it clear up to this point? What is the use of this time slice? Is it clear?
Yes.
So initially there are 3 jobs J1, J2 and J3 that are present inside this job queue. So since the J1 is occupying the first position, so the J1 will be allocated the processor. What is the burst time of J1?
12.
12. But what is the time slice I have allocated? The RR is giving only 5.
5.
Right. So the job 1, after it is allocated the processor, it will use that processor only for this time slice. That means once the job is submitted to the processor, the timer starts. Right. So after 5 milliseconds or after 5 units of time, what it will do is it will preempt this job. It will preempt. Preemption means nothing but taking off from the processor forcibly. That is called as preemption. Right. You will come across this terminology in the operating system concept. So once the J1 has been submitted to the processor, then the timer starts, and once the timer reaches the value of 5, which is equal to the time quantum, the job which is executing on the processor will be preempted from the processor. That means we will forcibly take away that job. Right. And so how many units of time it has executed? 5.
5, sir.
Right. So what is the remaining burst time it has for J1? 12
7.
minus 3 is 7. So once the job 1 is preempted, it is again pushed back into the job queue at the rear part. Right? Why? Because instructions always takes place at the rear part of the queue. Is it right?
Yes, sir.
Now the second job is given the processor. What is the burst time of second processor? 10. Right. So once the job 2 is submitted to the processor, again the timer starts, and if the timer reaches the value of 5, which is equal to the time slice, the job 2 will be preempted and it is placed inside the job queue line. So what is the remaining time of for J2?
5,
5, sir.
5. Now again, the third job is given to the processor. Once the job is given, you start the timer. Once the timer reaches the value of 5, it will be preempted and is placed inside the job queue at the rear part. What is the remaining time here?
3,
3,
sir.
sir.
Again, what is the element that is present as the first element in the job queue? It is again J1.
J1.
So again, J1 is given the processor. You start the timer. When it reaches 5, preempt the job 1 and place it at the end. What is the remaining time here?
2, sir.
2. Again, job 2. Job 2 is given the processor. Start the timer. When the timer reaches the value of 5, J2 will be preempted from the processor. But at this point, we can observe that J2 has been completed its execution. Is it right or not?
Yes, sir.
So J2 initially it has 10. After executing for the first time, 5 units of time will be reduced. So at the second time, it starts with 5 units of time and it has executed 5 units of time. Therefore, the job has been completed. Therefore, we will completely remove the job 2 from the job queue. Nothing to add here. Is it right or not?
Yes, sir.
Now the next job which is to be given to the processor is J3. Listen carefully. What is the remaining time for J3?
3 units.
3 units only, right? And J3, when the J3 is given to the processor, again the timer gets started, but this time it won't go for this complete time slice. It won't go for the 5 units of time. Why? Because there are only 3 units of time that is remained with the J3. So after 3 units of time, J3 will be preempted from the processor. Therefore, it completes its time. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Next, J1 will be given, and after executing the job J1 for 2 units of time, this is also completed, and this is. So this is how the round robin scheduling is working. So you should carefully write this point that round robin schedulers makes use of a concept called as time slice, and the value of time slice is the programming dependent, right? Here you can take 1 time slice, some other person may take 2 or 3, something like that. In this example, I have taken it as 5 units of time. Right? This is how the round robin scheduling makes use of the circular key. Makes use of the circular key. Is it right or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is one application of circular queues. Just give me 2 minutes of time. I'll complete one more application of queues. That is priority queues. This is the last application we have. So one more application of these queues is the priority queues. What do you understand by the term priority queue?
Which has to be given
Order of
the
importance.
most important.
Right. So it acts as a queue, but every element will be given a value which is called as the priority. So when you want to insert an element, the order of, so generally in queues, where you will insert the element?
The rear end.
At 0th location.
At the rear end. We say whenever you want to perform an NQ operation, we will be performing at the rear end, right? But in this priority queue, and in the case of general queues or the linear queues, at what point you are performing the DQ operation? DQ is at front and NQ is at rear. Is it right or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But in case of priority queues, when you insert or when you perform an NQ operation, you won't follow this rear part. There is no necessity that you always insert the new element at the rear part only. It depends at what position the element is inserted is dependent on the priority that is given to the element. As I told that in the priority queues, each and every element will be given a number which represents the priority. Right? For example, let us take 5 priorities P1 to P5. P1, P2, P3, P4 and P5. Right? Where P5 represents the major or the maximum priority and P1 represents the minor or minimum priority. Let us take an example. So for example, let us insert an element A which is having the priority P1. Is having the priority P1. I am writing this priorities at this end, right? P1. Can you see this one?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is where the first element is. So A is the first element, and since there are no elements that are present inside the queue, and P1, A, the element A with priority P1 is inserted at the first element. Let us assume that after some time P3, an element B with priority 3 has entered. Right? P is having a priority P3. Is P3 greater than P1 or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. So is it necessary that we insert this element B at the rear part only? This is not the case with the priority queues, right? So since P3 is having the highest priority than the P1, we should insert this element B in front of this A. So what we will do is you have to create a space here. You have to create a space here. So you move this A towards its backside and you insert B as the first element. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now assume at some other time the element C with P2 has entered. Now tell me where I have to insert this C. Is it at the rear part or in between A and B or at the front part?
In between A and B, sir.
In between A and B, right? So you delete this A and you move this A towards this side and you place this C here. Now assume that another element D has entered with priority P5, highest priority. So what you have to do? You have to move all the elements towards its back and you have to give the priority to D. This is how the insertion takes place. But remember that the deletion always takes place from the front part. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Right. This happens. You can see it in the real world situations also. So whenever you are waiting for the bank teller, that means when you go to visit a bank for some transaction. So if some elderly person comes or if some professor visits the bank, what you people will do? In general, it won't happen. But what we people will do is you will move aside and you will give some space to the professor so that you are giving some priority to the professor. Similarly, when you see the old people entering into the bank for the transaction, you won't ask them to go back to the last, right? You ask them to be inserted at any position, right? So those are the real life examples where priority queues are used. That means the elder with the age we are giving the priority. The designation professor we are giving the priority. Like that we have different priorities for different elements. But one point we have to remember here is insertions are modified. Therefore, you are not following the definition of the queue saying that insertions always done at the rear part. But deletions always done from the front part only. This is what you have to remember. Now tell me whether priority queues follows the definition of the queues or not. Say yes or no.
No, sir.
No. Right. Well, the definition of queue says that it is a linear data structure where insertion takes place at the rear end and deletion takes place from the front end. But here in the priority queue, deletions are always followed in the front part only, but regarding the insertions, we are not going to follow the definition. We are violating the definition of the queue. So priority queues, sometimes we will call that these queues are not the original queues. Why? Because we are violating the definition. Is it clear up to this point how the priority queues are used?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you, and we can implement this all these things we have discussed, right? So this is the end of today's session. I think we have another class. Sir is waiting. Thank you, one and all. You can leave the session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ajay.